Timmy Waltz, the gift that just keeps on giving, apparently, here. We've got his brother coming out and saying that he's not really a big fan of Waltz. You can see this first tweet here. Jeff Waltz, the brother of Tim, donated to Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and said, "We've just become a third world banana republic," on his Facebook page on March 30th of 2023. You can say, this is Jeff Waltz, his brother. We've become a third world banana republic. This has all been unearthed recently. And you can see this exclusive update. Tim Waltz's brother responds to Laura Loomer's report about the entire thing. "I haven't spoken to him," meaning Tim, "in 8 years, and I'm 100% opposed to all of his ideology. My family wasn't given any notice that he was selected and denied security the days after." And, and then he also says, "I've thought hard about doing something like that," talking about going to maybe a Trump rally. A lot of people saying he should. I mean, it would be hilarious to get the brother of Tim Waltz going to a Trump rally endorsing Trump. He says, "I'm torn between that and keeping my family out of it." That's understandable. The stories I could tell. Oh, what is he insinuating? What is Tim Waltz doing? I mean, Tim Waltz, they clearly didn't vet Tim Waltz at all. We know that with the stolen valor. We know that with all the lying, everything that's happened, the DUI. And I mean, they were going to pick Shapiro and they're like, "No, we can't do it." The really fringe left-wing people. And by the way, it turns out that doesn't even matter. Apparently those crazy left-wingers probably aren't going to vote for Kamala anyways, based on what she said during that interview about Israel and sending, an exorbitant amount of weapons to Israel to help them defend themselves against Palestine. A lot of far left-wing people did not like that. But he says, "The stories I could tell about Timmy Waltz, not the type of character you want making decisions about your future." So obviously, Waltz, it seems like there's some things that have happened in the past that maybe the Democrats don't want to have unearthed, if you will. But Tim Waltz's brother coming out against him. I mean, here it is right here. The Facebook message from Jeff Waltz. "Haven't spoken to him in 8 years. The brother, his own brother, has not spoken to him in 8 years. And it seems like the family does not agree at all with him. And apparently they were also denied security in the days after. They weren't even given any notice that he was selected as the VP." And to be fair, when you look back at him being selected, it was very kind of random. I mean, he had like 2% chance in terms of betting up until like 2 days before. It was mainly like Roy Cooper or Shapiro. It was mainly Shapiro, but there were a few others in there. And then Waltz, I remember somebody asking me, they're like, "Who the hell is Tim Waltz?" I'm like, "I don't know." It was like 3 days before he was picked because nobody thought he was going to be picked. It was just kind of a joke, but he ends up getting chosen to be the VP. And it looks like his brother is not too happy. And I would imagine Trump will see. People are like, "Well, is this real?" I mean, I believe, no, this is real. And I do think that Trump could definitely parlay this and use this as ammunition when you're talking about your own brother not really liking you and endorsing the candidate you're running against, who you say is this horrible monster, which, of course, what Waltz and all the Democrats say about Trump. It would just be hilarious irony. Your own brother. It's like, "Oh, Donald Trump is this big, bad, horrible person. My brother supports him. Yeah, he's terrible." It's just funny to think about. So we'll have to see if Trump does do something when it comes to that. It's just interesting to see his own brother come out against him there. You've also got this poll. I thought this was pretty encouraging. So the Survey USA poll originally came out. It was like the first poll, I want to say, right with all of the Kamala hype, right when it was at its peak at the beginning. And there were two polls that came out of Minnesota. It was the Fox News poll that had Harris up by 6, and then the Survey USA poll that had Harris up by 10. And then everyone's like, "Well, Harris is definitely going to win Minnesota." Well, we get another Survey USA poll that's cut that lead in half. So it was very clear there was some serious bias going on with that first poll, just in terms of everyone in the moment, the amount of hype that Harris had, it's died down, and you can see now Harris is only up 5. I'm not saying Trump's going to win Minnesota, but these numbers are very encouraging. What you did not want to have happen was for Harris, for a state like Minnesota, which it's not insanely important. And by the way, it is kind of funny that Waltz joins the ticket and Harris goes down in his state. Of course, we kind of knew that was going to happen. Walz really was. I'm not even sure why Walz was picked. I guess it was the Midwestern, like like small town dad. It was like that. That was the type of feel they were going for with Walz, I guess. So he was going to help with like all the Rust Belt, but it's just not a good VP pick. And to be fair, Vance is kind of the same dynamic, just in terms of Vance is really not going to help Trump in Ohio. With or without Vance, Trump's going to win Ohio probably by around 10 points, which is important for Moreno. You'd like him to win it by 10 points. Moreno will get kind of dragged over the finish line by maybe 3 or 4 and beat Brown. But when it comes to this poll, this is good news because you didn't want Minnesota to become like this 10 to 12 point laugher because, you know, that's kind of what it was in 2020. Then you're talking about maybe more of a liberal swell behind Harris. As long as it stays closer, you know, you remember with Biden, I mean, Trump had gotten it to basically a toss-up. I think some of that was the fact that the Democrats weren't donating to Biden anymore. But this is good news. You wanted to see polls like this. You want to see Minnesota closer. Even if, you know, Trump doesn't win Minnesota, if it stays within 5 or 6, he's performing way better than he did in 2020. And you're also talking about, I think, Virginia being the state based on what's gone on in there with Youngkin supporting Trump, with Youngkin's amazing approval rating, with the fact that Harris and Walz, according to recent polling in Virginia, have horrible approval rating. Almost, it's like very similar to Trump, which is terrible when you factor in how Trump normally overperforms based on his approval. I think Virginia with Youngkin, Tulsi, and Trump, he's got a very good chance to win that state. Also, it's just good to see. You don't want Minnesota again to become this laugher where she's up by like 10 or 12 points. There was clearly some serious bias going on with that poll that everyone kind of took and ran with, and we saw like the Cook political report. It has Harris now likely to win Minnesota, which may or may not be true, but it's just like the whole idea of those polls that they were kind of using as gospel, like, oh, she's definitely going to win it. They were purely response bias right after Harris was announced and she got all that hype. So that's kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about when it came to that poll that was just released. We've also got Nancy Pelosi on undocumented immigrants or migrants. We would like to move them to documented, right? We want to make them voters. So Nancy Pelosi on Bill Maher last night, admitting what we already knew, and this is why they don't want to pass any act that makes you show your ID. And by the way, there's something that came out that's very smart what Trump is doing. He's telling them you need to put the SAVE Act in the next bill, even if it means to shutting the government down. It's important to brute force it and force them to confront the idea that they do not want to pass something that would make our elections safer. It's very important you call them out on it. That's why that act was so important to get done, or at least try and get it passed. And basically force them to embarrass themselves and say, oh no, you know, illegals are not voting in the elections, but we're not going to do anything to make sure that's actually not happening. Of course, it's because they want illegals to vote. Why else? What's the other reason? I haven't heard a single answer from any Democrat. Why would you not want to pass that act to make sure only legal citizens are voting? You would think that would take away all the excuses for the conservatives, but you don't want to pass it. Why is that? That's funny. You've also got Nancy Pelosi saying, wait, listen, we've got the 10 million, probably 20 million at this point. I mean, that's what Trump says. It's probably like 15 to 20 million because they've been using the 10 million number for like a year now. It's a lot more than that. Probably like 12 to 15 million, to be honest. It's the 12 to 15 million illegals. We have to make them citizens, of course, yes. So it's Kamala Harris. She endorses the border wall, but she's already got illegals in the country that she wants to award them with citizenship and amnesty, right? That makes a lot of sense. You want to talk about two things not aligning. You want to be tough on the border, and they have to say that because they're getting destroyed on the topic. Biden was minus 30 in terms of approval rating on immigration. So she has to say, oh no, I'm a badass. I'm a prosecutor. I prosecuted all these migrants from Mexico. Of course I did. She's like, I'm the only one to prosecute people. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's such a straw man. But when it comes to this, it's like, we're really tough on the border, but we've got 12 million illegals in this country. And because we're so tough, we want to give them amnesty. That doesn't make very much sense. Of course, it's ridiculous. They need the voters. And that's why, at least Nancy Pelosi comes out and admits it. Nancy Pelosi states the goal of Democratic Party is to convert undocumented immigrants, illegals, into documented immigrants. with Bill Maher talking about, well, Nancy Pelosi's like, oh, it's a bipartisan thing. Both parties, immigration is bipartisan. The Democrats just keep lying to themselves about how they view the border. They want it wide open. They need it wide open. It is a breeding ground. It's a recruitment center for Democratic voters. Illegal immigration is absolutely. So they're trying to lie to people and say, no, we want a secure border, guys. It's all right. We know when Biden came in. Remember the gaslighting with the whole thing. See, the thing is they keep bringing this up, and I don't see the exact response when they say, well, Trump doesn't want to do the bipartisan border bill. Number one, it's not bipartisan. You're giving illegal immigrants amnesty. How's that bipartisan? What conservative would support that? So it's not bipartisan. That's the number one thing. Number two, they're the ones that started the entire mess. Nobody talks about this. In 2020, when Trump had a very good secure border, they called it racist. They said Trump was not letting in enough people. They said, we don't need a wall. This is the United States of America. The doors should be wide open. Everyone can come in. You don't hear that anymore now, do you? But that was their narrative in 2020. They wanted a wide open border because they said, I mean, this is our country. We need to let everyone come in. It's racist what Trump is doing to have a strong, strict border and to build this wall and to separate it. They tried comparing it to the Berlin Wall. This is what they did. They want you to forget about it. And so now they're like, oh, Trump doesn't want to pass the bipartisan bill. No, you destroyed all of Trump's policies that made it to where we had a very secure, safe border. And now it's Trump's fault that you decided to kill all those policies, and now you want some bipartisan deal that's ridiculous because it's allowing amnesty. It's absurd. And also money to Ukraine is in that bill as well. Come on. It's just pure gaslighting. They destroyed the border in 2021 when they called Trump racist and Biden got in and he reversed all of Trump's border policies. That's when it got destroyed. It did not get destroyed by Trump telling Republicans not to pass the new bipartisan bill because it would hurt him. Remember, that's the narrative. Oh, it would hurt him. It would hurt Trump if they passed this. No, you want to know what hurt the Democrats and what gave them a negative 30 approval rating in terms of immigration? Taking out all of Trump's policies by calling them racist, and it opened the border wide up. That's the heart of all of this. And then they gaslight and say, now we've got this bipartisan deal that the big bad evil Donald Trump won't agree to. It's like the Democrats are trying to come out and say they're pro-border security. It's like, it's the funniest joke ever. It's such gaslighting too. It's like, no, you're not. You want illegals into the country. You need them. Nancy Pelosi is saying, we need to make these 12 million people documented because we need more voters. I mean, that's what Nancy Pelosi is. I mean, this is absurd. So it's very important that they get called out on this. And boy, when it comes to that Walz topic, that's a tough look. Walz's brother coming out against him. And we'll have to see if Trump does have him for a rally, if this is actually legitimate. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.